Hi Sloths, and welcome back to Unpopular Opinions, Season 2. This is the show where I am very surprised I still have not angered the entire internet. However, today's episode may very well get me a few dislikes. So if you haven't noticed what the title is for some strange reason, today we're going to be talking about Tears of the Kingdom. The Legend of Zelda, Tears of the Kingdom. Now, I'm going to be talking about how I, in my own opinion, think that the game is overhyped and didn't quite live up to the hype that was surrounding it. Now, don't get me wrong, I absolutely love this game. I think this is a great game, and I think you should go and buy it. Yes. Buy it, play it, love it. But I am going to be talking about things in the game that I personally don't really like, or don't believe it to be as good as what I was actually hoping for it to be. Considering how long it took them to actually make the game. So, without further ado, let's get into the first category. Release and its promotion. So there's not a whole lot in terms of this. So what I actually really want to talk about is it took really long for it to come out. So I believe it was 2017 when the original game was announced and released. And then I think later on in 2018, like early 2018, not long after the release of Breath of the Wild, they announced that they were working on a sequel. And then later on, in the same year I believe it was announced that they were working on the sequel to Breath of the Wild, but using the same map. And everyone was like, oh, so it's going to be like, I don't know, a couple of years wait. That's fine. That's great. Oh boy. It took them, what like 6-7 years? I don't know how it took that long. The game kept getting delayed time and time again. And even then, there just wasn't much information. There was hardly any trailers or any gameplay. It was all so sparse that the hype surrounding it started dying out very quickly, and fans became kind of annoyed, like, why does it keep getting delayed? Where the hell is this game? Why can't I play it? I want to play this game. So the hype surrounding it both overflowed into anger, but also dissipated into disappointment. I don't really know of many games that have actually had that kind of situation, to be honest. The only thing I could even relate this to is probably the Yuri on Ice film, which I believe is still in the works and was announced many years ago at this point. There's been very little information on it. There's been pretty much no announcements or trailers after the fact, or at least not much of them anyway. And it's just information on it so sparse. It's just fans are getting annoyed but also disappointed at the same time because time keeps passing on and apparently they're still working on it. It's like, how can it be taking this long? This is what we call development hell. It's when things just keep going wrong and wrong and wrong and wrong and wrong. Things keep getting delayed to the point of won't it even ever come out? Now, I believe there was another game that had this similar issue, and I think it was one of the Duke Nukem games. Was it? Oh, I don't know. Was it Duke Nukem 3D? No, not Duke Nukem 3D. Anyway, it was one of them. It was the one that I think got released in 2012 when it was announced in 2002 or something like that. 10 years of development hell. I don't remember. It might have been even longer than that. But still, I just believe the game is overhyped and there's not as much content as I think most of us were looking forward to, despite how long it took to make. So, with all that being said, let's move on to the next category, graphics. So, I don't know what it is with the graphics of Tears of the Kingdom, especially compared to Breath of the Wild. It's the same style, yet everything just... not everything, but most things look very outdated in a general sense. I don't know if it's because of the limitations of a Switch, or because we've seen this entire setup before, and now that it's been done several years later, it just looks the same and it looks like there's been no improvement. I don't know. I really don't know. But it's so strange. So a lot of the old textures as well have just not been updated since their original release in 2017, and later on the Switch, I think just only about a month or so after. I don't know. But even a lot of the models don't seem to be very much updated. I mean, there's a lot of like areas and places and stuff that just look the exact same and don't have any updated textures or much of an update to the models. And it's mainly like landmarks and areas and things like that where that really shows. And I don't know if it's, again, because if it's words, again, I don't know if it's because we've already seen it or if it's because we were expecting it to look even better than before because it's taken so long to come out, and it's, you know, there's been several years of innovation since then when it comes to the Switch and its system power or whatever, its graphics power. It just doesn't look as pretty as Breath of the Wild, and I really don't know why. It really just does not look as good. Maybe it's because sometimes it's just a bit darker because, you know, you're going under the depths, and even in the skies you get all this saturation as well from, you know, just beams of light. So I really don't know. So another thing is the new models and some of the new textures sometimes look a bit out of place when you put them like right next to old textures, which is really, really awkward. My biggest gripe about this is probably the Gibdos, or at least like the Gibdo Queen especially, or the Flying Gibdos actually, the Moth Gibdos. Put a Moth Gibdo right next to, like, I don't know, a Bokoblin, and you just think to yourself, well, these things look completely different, and not just because it's a different style and different model. It's because they actually made these textures and these models with, well, not with new skills, but with updated abilities and technology from where they were back in 2017. And it really does show if you'd like do an absolute comparison. I mean, look at Gleox, for example. They look amazing. Then you look at Stone Tellus and you're like, wow. Why have they not updated the textures on this thing? It looks the exact same. And then you realise that, and it doesn't feel as cel shaded as it was before. For some strange reason, it's still a cel shaded game. But I don't know if they decided to take some of the textures a bit more realistically with the newer stuff, and then just leave the old stuff behind, and it just... I don't know. It feels like they didn't update the textures when they probably should have. But oh well. So, yeah, that's it for the graphics. On to the next category. Story. So I'm not going to put any spoilers in this. I'm not going to be talking about the story itself. I'm just going to be talking about my feelings and opinions on the general fact that there is a story in it. So, the story just feels like it's full of plot holes, and it just, honestly, compared to other games in the series, it just does not make much sense. It makes very little sense, and that worries me. It really does worry me, because it seemingly ignores a lot of the timeline, because it puts itself so far in the future from other games on the timeline, and it's just, it kind of irks me a little bit. It just makes it really hard to put both Breath of the Wild and itself on the timeline, because there's such a massive gap now. And because it also ignores bits of the past, as well as minor previous lore. Again, I'm not going to spoil it for you, go play it for yourself. And I also feel like there's a lot of missed opportunities. The biggest missed opportunity, I would say, is the Gloom Hands definitely should have just been a reincarnation or variant of Wall and Floor Masters, because that's exactly what they are. If they named them Floor Masters, that would have given fans the absolute willies. They would have been like, woo, yeah. And then, I mean, when everyone first saw the Gleeok, they was like, oh yes, Gleeoks are back, yes. And then they were introduced to Gyarados, and I was like, woohoo, we got Gyarados. A lot of people were hoping for Redeads, but we got Gyarados instead, which I think is perfectly fine, to be honest. I also like the bug-like implications of the Gyarados, which we didn't really see in the past, to be honest. But I really like it. They're really creepy, they're really freaky, they're really good. But then we got Pose, and then people were like, oh, I thought we were going to be able to, like, interact with these people, or collect them for other purposes, or, actually battle Pose, and then maybe take their Poe remains, or whatever you want to call them. But now there's just an unlimited supply of Poes all over the place for collecting, so you can get some bits, and because it's an infinite supply, you're always like, well, I just don't need to spend any of these Poes on anything. That's what it's eventually going to be like, so it's just really disappointing sometimes. There's a lot of missed opportunities in it, and I think that, there should have been more. But there's also one thing I will also quickly go over. So we all know that Ganondorf is back, right? So they always refer to Ganondorf as like the Demon King. But Ganondorf in previous incarnations was not the Demon King, he was the King of the Gerudos. The Demon King has always been reserved for a name of Demise, the Demon King Demise from Skyward Sword, or Ganon. But the thing is, Ganondorf never turns into Ganon, nor does he ever become the Demon King Demise, which is just really, really strange, especially because when Ganondorf gets the stone, the secret stone. I'm sorry, I know I wasn't going to do any spoilers, but I'm sure you already know about this anyway. He has a new sort of style to him that looks a lot like the Demon King Demise. And does he ever get called Demise? No. So I, throughout the entire thing, was like calling him Demise because I was expecting him to like revert back to his original form of Demise. But no. They don't reference his first incarnation at all in the entire game. The closest we get to that is Zant. But Zant's not even from his original incarnation all the way back in Skyward Sword. Zant is from Twilight Princess. So we don't even get a hint towards Girahim. The closest we get to Skyward Sword in this game is the Skyward Sword outfits, the Goddess Sword, I believe it is, and the fact that when the Master Sword glows, it makes the sound that it did back in Skyward Sword, and that sound is Fi, or Fi, or whatever her name's supposed to be, speaking through the sword. And it's just like, but none of that gets any recognition. They don't say, oh, the Master Sword is technically alive because there's a goddess inside of the sword called Fi, or Fi. And because she's bound to the Master Sword, she can't, like, actually come outside of the Master Sword like she did back in Skyward Sword when she was part of the Goddess Sword. Or was the Goddess Sword. Or rather, whatever. It's just, there's so much missed opportunity, and I feel bad because there's so much I wanted to see, and there's so much that other people wanted to see, and I mean, it's a great game, but there could have been so much more, especially with the time they took to make this game. But that's for a different reason, and that reason will be discussed in the next category, gameplay. So when it comes to the gameplay of Tears of the Kingdom, it's basically very much like Breath of the Wild. I'm only going to be talking about the things that I don't necessarily like, instead of, every single gameplay aspect. So let's get into the first thing. The world. It felt too big. And I was left exploring every single nook and cranny because that's what Breath of the Wild taught me to do in that game. Carrying it over to this game, it'll lead you to mostly nothing. Most places have either been hollowed out, already explored in the previous game, and everything that's left there is usually just a core rock, or maybe a slight nod or reference to the previous game. I mean, there's also sometimes a little bit more to an area that you couldn't have seen possibly in the previous game, which is cool, but it's not done often enough for me to be like, oh yes, I must check everything. I spent hours and hours and hours and hours and absolute hours going and combing through every single part of Hyrule, every single area, to find mostly nothing but bloody Koroks. And Koroks. We'll get into Koroks in a minute. But because of all of this, the overworld was left a lot more empty, and I know they also had to get rid of a lot of, like, land, an area, so that people could use the new mechanics that I've always called them like nuts and bolts mechanics, because as far as I'm aware, the first time I ever saw this was in Banjo-Kazooie Nuts and Bolts, which was an absolute flop of a game. And as soon as this was announced that we were going to get these device and vehicle building mechanics, people were like, oh no, we're not going through this again, please no. And honestly, a lot of people really, really loved it. I myself, well, we'll get to that in a minute. And the sky. I want to talk about the sky quickly. It's pretty. It's interesting. It reminds me a lot of Skyloft and the surrounding islands in Skyward Sword. But there's so much nothing up in the sky. There's nowhere near as much to explore as it was, suggested. I'm sure they hinted towards the sky being, this massive area full of all sorts of unique things. Really didn't feel like that. It felt like I was exploring a bunch of floating islands, and on occasion I'll have, a Korok or a shrine, and I'd just be like, I hope this shrine's a fight because I'm getting bored of all these pointless puzzles. I don't know why, I just didn't really care much about the puzzles. in Tears of the Kingdom. I think I preferred them a bit more in Breath of the Wild, and I don't know why. Maybe it's because of the aesthetic, or maybe because it was more interesting with the mechanics and couldn't be bothered to build things all the time. Really wasn't my thing. And most quests were really quick and didn't really give much in terms of rewards that was like actually cool. It was usually just rupees and more ingredients that you didn't need, and that kind of made me a little bit sad. I was hoping for like, you know, doing a really cool side quest mission thing, and then in the end I'll get like Majora's Mask and it'll be a really cool reference to the past, but no. How'd you get Majora's Mask in the game, you might ask? Well, other than telling you to go and play it, I guess I could tell you. I think you have to find it in a cave. Yes, caves are interesting and cool for exploration, so are wells. But I guess I just didn't care as much because, I don't know, I feel like there was supposed to be more to it. But I just didn't quite find what I was looking for, which was everything. And just more. But no, I just got mostly nothing, and then a bubble frog gem thing. I don't know. It was very strange. It really was very strange. Anyway, what else do I want to talk about? Okay, yes. So I don't remember this being as much of a problem in Breath of the Wild, and I don't know why. Maybe it's because it was harder in Breath of the Wild? Like, I don't know. Maybe it's because there was a secondary, like, hard mode to Breath of the Wild that wasn't in Tears of the Kingdom, because we're not doing DLC for it, which is both good but also really, really sad, because there's so much stuff that they really, really could have included, but didn't, and never will. So, oh well. But yeah, I always ended up, like, in Tears of the Kingdom, having so much, like, meals and potions and food stuff that I just did not need. And because of that, my inventory was just always full. And it'd be really silly because I'd do another mission and then I'd get more food, or meals or potions or something, but then they were like, oh, sorry, it appears that your inventory's full for food and stuff, so instead I'm just going to give you more of these useless rupees. And I don't know what it is, but I just didn't often buy or need to buy a lot in the game because I was already getting so many ingredients and all sorts just by roaming around. And the most thing that I had to buy was arrows, but we'll get into that as well. So, because you always ended up with too much food, what could have happened is they could have used more Korok seeds to give you more space for things like meals and elixirs or potions or whatever you want to call them. Instead, they only did that with weapons, bows, with weapons, bows, and shields. But even then, I ended up constantly running out of space and being like, well, I want this in my inventory because it's cool, but oh, too bad. Ooh, sorry about the yawn there. Oh, too bad, I already have my inventory full. I can't have any more things in it. So, yeah, it was a little bit sad. Speaking of Koroks, once again, just like the first game, collecting all Korok seeds gives you a useless golden Korok turd. Same as the first game, absolutely useless, absolutely pointless, nothing but a joke and a big fuck you by Nintendo. Which, just, I don't know. I don't know why they felt the need to do that again. And what's even worse about Koroks is that the seeds become very useless after a while. So, once you get all the satchels fully upgraded and you get, you know, all the space in your inventory, then you're just collecting Korok seeds. And then And then you'll go back to Hestu and he'll be like, oh, cool, you've got Korok seeds. If you give me some Korok seeds, I'll expand your satchels even further. And then you'll be like, sure, why not, take some. And then he'll be like, oh, wait, you can't do that because I've already fully upgraded them all. Oh, come back to me when you've got all of them. And then you come back to him with all of them and all you get is this giant golden turd. Which is stupid. Very stupid. Also, collecting Korok seeds and Pose, dealing with Korok quests, and like the sign placements as well, it can just be really boring and tedious with these side little things and collectibles, but there's too many of them and you don't know where they all are. And it was fun collecting them all in the first game, but I don't know, in the second game it's just like, really? We're doing this all over again? Plus, we've got to go and mess about with these stupid sign things about Hudson Sons. It's just like, no. No, I'm so son and done with it. Can't believe I just said that. There's more. There's more. There is more. Sages. You know, the sages in the game. They get in the way so often, it gets so frustrating. There's so many times where I'm trying to do things, or attack an enemy, or trying to do something else with a different sage, and then another one just decides it wants to go in front of me, and then I activate that one by mistake, and it's just like, that's not what I wanted to do. And because of it, the sound effects, I don't know why, but they seem kind of irritating, at least towards me, in those moments. So it just, I end up not wanting to use them because they're just so annoying sometimes. But they're also really helpful for obvious things like killing enemies. They can, you know, keep some enemies off you, and they can do, you know, the attacks and stuff like that. There's another little minor gripe I have with this game, and I don't know if it's a real thing or if it's just something that I feel, but I feel like it's harder to upgrade armor for some reason. I don't know why, it just feels like that. I really struggled this time over with it. I don't know why. And, you know earlier how I said I had to keep buying loads of arrows? Well, it's because of the depths. The depths, you basically use all your arrows in one trip, and then you have to go back and get more, and it's like, ugh, it's so annoying because you just have to light up everything. Also, I'm just going to quickly add this on. The ending is kind of dumb. Enough said. That's all I wanted to say about that. I'm not going to spoil the ending for you. That's just how I feel. I wasn't a huge fan of the very end of the game, but oh well. I also want to quickly mention, I didn't really care much about the vehicle and device building mechanics. A lot of the time I was trying to explore and do like deep explorations of places, and like being on a vehicle and or a device of some sort and just floating around, flying around, driving around, going at the speed of sound. It hindered that because everything was going too fast and I couldn't focus on every little detail. So yeah, it was kind of irritating. Also, gloom enemies are really annoying, especially like Gloom King Gleok. Just Gloom Gleoks in general. It's so hard to say Gloom Gleok. Why is it so hard to say Gloom Gleok? I really don't know. But yeah, I didn't really like Gloom enemies because they were just really infuriating to deal with. They also seemed kind of stronger, and I don't know why. Like, I think they hit for more, but I don't really know. Also, really? Goma! Why did you do that to me, Aonuma? AG Aonuma, I am calling you out right now. Why the actual hell did you put Goma in the game? Not just Goma in the game, but Goma in the depths in the game. It's a giant spider enemy. I know. It's so... Oh, I struggled so much with it. I really did. I just hate Goma. I really do. Although, I will say, I think Marble Goma is a bit easier for me to deal with than previous Gomas, where it was like these horrible flesh-coloured legs with little spiky hair things on them. It's just... Ugh. I think they had that back in like Ocarina of Time or Majora's Mask. And I think I saw it again in the original Hyrule Warriors game for the Wii U. No. No. Horrible. Absolutely disgusting. I hated it so much. Also, the Queen Gibdo's fights seemed to make no sense for me for some reason at all. I couldn't understand. I mean, obviously I got through them eventually. I didn't like die or anything, but I just never understood what I was supposed to do. I just kept blowing the crap out of them. So now we're on the last category. Fixed issues that aren't really fixed. So the first thing I quickly want to mention is climbing. So back in Breath of the Wild, one of people's biggest problems was the climbing mechanic, especially in the rain. So when it was raining, when it was wet, you could not climb at all to save your life. You couldn't. And then you'll be like climbing away and all of a sudden it'll start raining. And what happens when that happens? Well, you just start slipping all the way down. It's so frustrating. So, to fix this in Tears of the Kingdom, they made two things. The first thing, well actually they made three things. The first thing, sticky elixirs. Which, fine, except for they don't work. I don't know why, but they just never really worked for me. I don't know. I don't know if it was just not strong enough of a level. But I swear, even with like the 3-star elixirs or whatever you want to call them, it just didn't really work very well. And then the whole froggy outfit thing, but the froggy outfit was like locked behind missions that you had to go and look aimlessly for, and I just didn't really enjoy that because I was constantly roaming around trying to do things and stuff, and then I'll come across a stable where you get little mini quests that you have to deal with, and then if you do so many, you end up with one part of the froggy outfit, plus you get paid a stupid amount of rupees, and it's just like, no, just give me the outfit, let me unlock it normally, or, you know, buy it, or just something. I was not a fan. I was not a fan of that. But like I said, the elixirs usually did nothing for me, and it got even worse because a lot of caves are wet. So you couldn't climb the walls of caves a lot of the times because it was just wet, and then it's so annoying. The third thing is, so if you wanted to climb or get high, well, not get high, but get higher up in Breath of the Wild, the way you'd really do this quickly was to use Rivali's Gale? Yeah, Rivali's Gale, to just fling yourself up into the air. In this game you don't have anything even remotely like that apart from springs, but, you know, you don't have them all the time. You've got to go and sort of play a gotcha game to... You've got to play gotcha just to get it, and it's just like, no. It's not a guaranteed get. Sure, you can just put like 5 of those ancient orb thingies into the gotcha machine, and then a bunch will come out, like 10, 12 of them. But out of all of them, you'll probably get, like, I don't know, 2 springs, and it's just, no. Why did you make it like this? Stop wasting my ancient core thingies. What else did they do to fix this entire problem with the whole people getting sick of climbing up giant mountains? Well, they made this thing, this feature, this mechanic where you can press a button and swim through the ceiling. But there's also just times where that just doesn't happen, especially on like giant mountains. You can't like instantly get all the way to the top. So that was kind of a little bit annoying, but oh well. So you kind of just needed like specific gear and maxing out your stamina and getting loads of potions. It's either that or you waste 30-40 minutes trying to figure out how to build something. I really was not a fan of the vehicle and device building mechanics. I don't even know why that was a thing, but it's a thing. I don't know who said it was a good idea. I mean, sure, it was fun at some points, but I just didn't care for it. I don't know. I just didn't. So, there's also physics. Just physics. Sometimes physics just don't make sense at all. That was the same problem in Breath of the Wild, where although physics worked most of the time, sometimes it was just really, really stupid. And the same goes for Tears of the Kingdom. Just every now and then, you'll get this really, really stupid physics problem that you just, I don't know, it just doesn't make sense. Time-based quests are also still really annoying and can be needlessly cryptic. Just mentioning that. And last but not least, the final thought. Battles are still mostly mash a single button until the enemy dies, which is kind of fine, but I don't know. I really like Hyrule Warriors and its mechanics in battles, but obviously those mechanics are for like hordes of enemies, and sure, you get small hordes of enemies in Tears of the Kingdom and Breath of the Wild as well, but it's just, I don't know. It just seems very simplistic, and they tried to make it not simplistic by giving you more options of battle. But the easiest and best way to go about doing things, if you really want to play simplistically, kind of like I do, you just make a bunch of swords and kill things with swords, and just mash the Y button or whatever button you've got it mapped to. I don't remember what I've got it mapped to, actually. Might be Y, might be B, might be A, might be X. I have no idea. Oh, also, just a little side note, I believe in Tears of the Kingdom, they actually have button mapping now, whereas Breath of the Wild didn't. I only know about this because my friend was complaining about the controls in Breath of the Wild, which I never had a problem with, and I think like 90% of the internet never had a problem with. But he was adamant that he hated the controls and that the controls really needed button mapping. But I think in Tears of the Kingdom they have button mapping? I don't quite remember. It might not be like outright button mapping, but it might just be, you know, something a little bit extra so you can have like a certain button that does one thing rather than like maybe just a switch of buttons rather than you can have like the attack button, the left thumbstick for some stupid reason. So that's all I really wanted to talk about with Tears of Kingdom. My final thoughts are that this game is still incredible. It's still fun to play. It's still really cool. And it's just an outright really fun experience and great game. It does have a lot of problems. It's nowhere near as good as Breath of the Wild, in my personal opinion. Hell, it might not even be as amazing as like Majora's Mask or Ocarina of Time for some people. I mean, there was a question asked in my Q&A, Tears of a Kingdom or Ocarina of Time, and I honestly don't know at this point, because a little bit of an unpopular opinion just to throw onto this right now is I think Ocarina of Time is really overrated. It's a great game, don't get me wrong, but I feel like it's not as great as what everyone says it is. Especially the original version. I will stand by that. It's probably not as good as everyone keeps making it out to be. Story-wise, brilliant. Gameplay-wise, brilliant. But mechanically, hideous. It's a very, very clunky feeling game, in my opinion, at least. From what I remember. I haven't played it in years. And I think it got a little bit better in terms of that in Ocarina of Time 3D. But again, I've not played that in years, so I don't know. Then again, I'm also one of the few people who actually enjoyed Spirit Tracks, so what do I know? Maybe my opinion is completely wrong and uncalled for. But again, who knows? So, that is going to be the end of this video. It's been a long one. Thank you for sticking with me through this ramble. And yeah, just please like and subscribe. It's always free, and I'll see you later.